We're all in. Awesome. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. And I'm looking forward to talking about a whole bunch of different things today, right? So I actually want to jump straight in with Sway.
Okay.
I watched it last night. I think the easiest way to explain it to people is if you've seen Phone Booth, it's got a very similar vibe to that, where I was expecting it to have a broader range at first when it stayed in the apartment for as long as it did. And some of the scenes there make you feel like it's such a big world, even though it's in such a confined area.
Yeah.
And I also heard you shot this in a fairly quick time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Like, what was your timeline on that?
So out of necessity, we shot it in 6 days.
Wow.
Which is pretty fast for a feature. So for anyone who's not a filmmaker, your typical feature film, on a small scale is about 3 weeks. Your Hollywood film could go anywhere between 2 months and a whole year to be shooting. So the fact that we shot it in 6 days was a full marathon. And it wasn't because we were trying to, win some sort of accolades. It was really indie spirit at its finest. And so shooting something in that time frame, we had a script that was a tight 88-page script. We had a cast and crew who is all Toronto based, and we had timelines of people who could only be there for a couple days, sometimes just for 1 day. We had principal cast. Our main actor, Emmanuel Kabongo, was also the producer of the film, and so was Michelle Morgan, the interviewer.
Yep.
And so having those two people as sort of creative leads as well as being actors on the film helped out a lot because they were able to be with us throughout the entire production, guide us with stuff that we needed, and overall allowed us to get it done in that short period of time. And the miraculous thing about the film is that we were able to shoot it not only in that time frame, but we made our day. At the end of every single day, we always had 20 minutes to spare. Actually, we had an hour to spare because we had to rearrange the house. Someone lived there. That was someone's penthouse that we were shooting at. It wasn't some film set. So this gentleman allowed us to shoot in his house so long as it looked exactly like his house when we finished. So we moved the chairs, the paintings, the gear, the dolly, everything went into the hallway or onto his rooftop or into a gear truck. And then every day we come in an hour early, set it all up, and then tear it down again.
Love that.
So it was this exercise of like build up, tear down, build up, tear down.
It's like looking at your phone at all the photos. And it's like,
yeah.
that goes there. Yeah.
The whole thing. And it got to a point of so much build up, tear down that by our 6th day, I went to Charlie, the co-director of the project. Him and I worked on it together. I was like, man, we don't have the movie. We have like half of it. I was certain we forgot to shoot half the film because how do you do something that quick?
Yeah.
And we ended up having it all.
It's absolutely incredible because it's a roller coaster of a film. I think the one scene that really encapsulates it really well is, and I don't want to give away too many spoilers, so I'm going to kind of be pretty vague. There's a scene on the balcony where there's a camera going around and there's these conversations are happening, it's going around and you're starting to feel all losing control and all this. And that moment was where I was like, okay, I'm in for something real special here because these guys, they understand how to tell a story really well, and the acting was phenomenal. And then just how it all weaved together, it was a beautiful, and like it didn't feel like an indie film, which I know it's like it was an indie film by all means, but it just didn't feel like it. It felt like a full production. The way like I was looking through the credits afterwards, and I'm like, that is like a skeleton crew in so many ways, and it's just phenomenal what you're able to do with a small crew. And that's kind of where is kind of segueing into my thoughts over the last probably 2 years. Right, as I've been going through a whole bunch of different changes personally and professionally, and starting to look at how simplifying something is sometimes the way through it, right? And I feel that the more we go into media and we go into art, the more we seek to go back to the simplicity of beginning, like the playing, the understand. Like we built this podcast so we could play, right? Do you find that because you've worked on union sets, right? Or like bigger sets?
Bigger sets.
Yeah.
I've never been union though.
Okay. So you worked on bigger sets and then you work on these small sets. And I find these small sets have it's like a sense of community in them, right?
Totally. And I think it's funny. I was just talking to my fiance about this morning. There's almost like a yearning to go back to that childlike wonder whenever you're making something. But when you become so advanced or technologically competent, you've almost created all these shortcuts that say, don't do that. don't make the camera swivel around the thing because people will get sick. You should shoot it at 3 angles. You should do it this and that. And it's funny because I think as I'd say adult filmmakers, all we're trying to do is get back to that imagination we had when we were 11 or 12, imagining this. And it's funny, when I was 11 or 12, all I wanted to be was 32 with the skill and technical ability I have now. And so it's this weird zigzag. And I think more and more about my younger self and be like, oh, I wish I could just go back to that limitless creativity that person had without these shortcuts, because these shortcuts, or it should be done this way, or these rules are counterintuitive to the creative process. And the shots that most people talk about in our feature are not the standard coverage that we caught on the Alexa 35. It's the crazy wild things that Charlie and I both were like, oh, why don't we just do this?
Yeah.
And it was that 10-year-old coming out and that excitement of what it feels like to be with a group of friends just coming up with stuff. And so that shot specifically, because I want to talk about that shot.
Yeah, please do.
That shot was on our last day. So it was day 6 of shooting the movie.
Okay.
And if you see that, there's 3 actors on a rooftop.
Yep.
Which means you have, your standard coverage. You'd have your over. So that's 3 angles. And because it's such an intense scene, you probably want a medium or a wide of each one of those. So let's say you get 2 versions of that, 6 shots. You want to get a wide of the whole thing, or perhaps 2 wide. So now we're at 8 shots in total. And we had, I think, 45 minutes to do that whole bit. And so I went to Charlie and I said, hey, like, this is really tight. I had to travel later on that day and I wanted to be there for the whole shoot day. So I was like, what if we just captured it in 2 shots? I just swivel around them once on the gimbal one way, and then I swivel around them once on the gimbal.
Work?
Yeah, it was just a gimbal, and I didn't have any rigging. So
I tried to figure it out because like I love problem solving those things. And I was like, it's definitely a track.
No, 0 track. So it was just me with my gimbal, my FX3. I didn't even have any monitor. We didn't have director monitor. It was just me looking at a little screen. And I'm just trying to keep them in shot the entire time.
Yeah.
And even when we were done shooting it, I was like, either we have it or we have to redo this entire thing.
Yeah.
And even in editing, I'm like, I don't even know if it works. Like, I think people are going to dislike this. And some people don't like it. I showed it to my family, like, oh, I feel like I'm going to be sick.
Yeah.
But it's funny, those sort of questionable moments or those areas of like the narrowest of limitation become the most talked about things. And I recognize that when we shot that scene, I try and take that into everything I do, where it's like, if life gives you a small window that's that big, sometimes that's actually the exact thing you have to go through, versus what we think is we're always trying to find the widest window, which is multiple coverage. We need to have the dolly track and we have to have all these things. And it's like, actually, no one's going to remember the person who did the thing the way it was supposed to be done. People are going to remember the creative innovation that happened. And not that was the intention of the scene. It just by happenstance went that way. But it ended up creating magic. It created lemonade.
Well, because it's such a huge risk. Because it was like a long take too. At one point I was like, I'm not someone that does well with motion sickness, so it affected me great. Because I was like sitting there, I was like, everything's losing control, and it's a very awkward moment, and what's happening here, and it's like, I'm in this now. I'm in it with them, right? So like for me, I was like, no, accept the fact that you're in this uncomfortable kind of like swirling. And it's like, that to me was beautifully done. But the overall, like the shot, like we've done enough shooting now that I know, like if something messes up there, you have to restart that entire shot. Right.
So the original version of that, which Sydney Cowper, our editor, she had it we did it as a oneer. Like it was all one take, them coming through the door, the camera spins around. We cut it to 2 angles because I felt that you had to almost unscramble your brain a little bit.
It works really well.
One way and then you unscramble the other way, and then hopefully it all works out.
It actually, when you switched, I was like, oh, thank God. But then it would start going again. I'm like, oh no, here we go again. And so I was like, that's a really brilliant move, because you'd done the oneer at the beginning.
Yeah.
Which was just like, that was a beautiful long shot. And I was just like, at one point I was just like, there's not been a cut yet. Right. And then it cuts, I think it cuts at the peephole, right? Like that's when I was like, oh, that's a brilliant way of doing that. But it's like, you felt like you were there. And because of how intimate the location was, you were in it, whether you wanted to or not. Right. And it's like, you're kind of like this, and it's getting more and more good and all different. And it was a real treat to watch.
Thanks,
thank
man.
you. Yeah.
Oh, it's so cool.
And it's just, I love the fact that you did that in 6 days, that you did it with a small team, that you're able to pull that off. And it gives hope for a lot of young creatives, because a lot of young creatives go, I got to go into a union set. I've got to get this, and I've got to be this person before I can become a filmmaker. When it's like, no, find some friends, get together, get an idea, film it.
And I think I don't know if it's the Canadian way or it's just sort of what systems we're in, but I think the thing I've recognized with more stuff that I make is like, there is no system. There is no way to do something. When we were approaching Sway, Charlie Hamilton, writer-director, and he's one of my best friends, reached out to me 3 weeks before we started shooting. And he's like, hey man, I've got this script, I've got an actor, and I've got $5,000. I'm going to go make this. Do you want to direct it with me? I was like, send me the script. We'll see. And I read the script. I'm like, oh, there's no way I can't be a part of this. Yeah. And so in 3 weeks, I think it was 3 weeks, maybe a month, we put everything together, literally locking the location 3 days before we shot the movie. And so, trust me, I was very nervous about that.
Okay, so I want to talk about like the layers of stress involved with this, right? Yeah. Because like, anybody who's worked in the film industry knows that there may be a few stresses that happen during the film industry, but finding out that your location where it's locked is 3 days before your main shoot days, that's terrifying. Like, what did you feel other than that? Yeah,
like it's funny. The location thing is a huge thing for me. So prior to doing this feature, I've done a couple other features beforehand, and as a filmmaker, that location is kind of it's the backdrop of every shot, but not only is it what's behind your character, it's all of the angles you're finding, it's the lighting, it's the storytelling. And if the location doesn't work, then your movie's it doesn't matter how you window dress it. Your actors are going to have struggle, your cinematographer's going to have a struggle, everyone's just not going to feel creatively liberated. And so it was really important to me that we had a location going in, especially because that is our stage for our stage play, because it's a movie all in one location. That's a big part of the film.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge stressor leading up to the project. Once we had locked the location, the film actually worked really well. Like I know the setup sounds pretty stress inducing, like 6 days, all on basically one actor's shoulders, very small crew, low budget. But ironically, like I said, we made our days. We had an hour to spare at the end of every day. No one was upset at each other. And it was the easiest shoot I had done. And I adopted this on a short film I made prior, which is this mentality of surrender filmmaking. And I think you can really take that into any craft that you're doing. But it's sort of like just surrender to the process. And it feels a little woo-woo and yoga-y or whatever. But you can't control all the outcomes. And especially in film, where it is an art form with every outcome imaginable, because you're working with 50 different collaborators, you can't control everything unless you have the power of like a David Fincher or the budget of a David Fincher. If you're at my level, there's no way you can get the exact location you're looking for, the exact wardrobe, the exact painting on the wall. There's no way. But you actually end up getting what you want by just turning off that control in your head, and it ends up working. Was there a better penthouse for us to shoot in? Probably. Was there, better outcomes that we could have maybe got? Maybe. But we ended up getting this, and this is the film that has now, catapulted both Charlie and I and the cast and the crew part of the film. So I think just surrendering to the process and just allowing it to happen garners a much better result than trying to control every outcome, because then it makes people very stressed out. And a good friend of mine, he has a saying where it's happy bees make tasty honey. And so if you're in a good mindset and you're creating a good environment for those who you're working with, the product is going to be tasty honey.
Yeah.
The film is going to end up looking better, and you're going to remember it to be better. Like the craziest thing is we shot this movie 2 years ago, and now I have to pretend like we shot it last week.
Yeah, because for me, I'm going into it going like, wow, this was shot this year or last year. It's like, it feels so fresh.
Yeah.
Right? But to you, it's like there's space. Like, what does that space allow you in your mind to assimilate?
Sorry, what do you mean
by
that?
When you have that space between the recognition of your project
right.
to now, like where you're getting recognized for it, like what is going through your mind at this point? Like, is it, yeah, of course that was great. Or are you just reliving it, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's fun. Like, I think film is the beautiful journal entry of what you thought what your taste thought was good at the time. And it's like this, like I journal every day. I love memories and taking photos and that. And I think art is this interesting time capsule of where you were at, you know, what music you thought was cool, what camera angles you thought was cool, lighting, performance, script, like all of those things of taste were where I was at that point. And some of it translates to me now. Other times it's just this little pocket. So having this like reflective little time capsule I can look back on and be like, oh yeah, like past me did that. Almost looking at me as a different person, like talking about it as if it's myself feels very egotistical, and I just have to separate myself and just be like, hey, that was some guy who made these decisions on that day, and I just know him well, but I'm not that guy. It's a lot easier. So there's a nice degree of separation. I think if we had shot it a week ago, I would have been talking to you about like the call sheet or something, very like, you know, tactile, granular things. But to have a 2-year separation makes it a little bit easier to look at sort of the highlight moments.
Interesting, yeah, because a lot of our projects are more commercial than kind of entertainment. And so a lot of our stuff goes out and it gets instant kind of like yes, no, and then it's done. Yeah. Right. So then we just move on to the next. When in filmmaking and in storytelling, it lives on. And that's really cool because you can, and we see it in like different kind of like podcast sessions and stuff where people are like, oh, that podcast you're talking to so-and-so. And I was like, that was like a year and a half ago now. It's like, that feels so weird, right? Because like now we're in a different spot than we were, you know, and that's, I think the timelessness of a movie or of an entertainment piece is the magic that gets us into it. But I think it's the thing that we least expect when we get into it.
Oh, interesting. I love that. Yeah, the timelessness. You're right. Yeah, it's so cool. And it's funny thinking about like how a project will kind of live on. And I don't think you should go into any art form being like, this is going to last forever. Like, it's just really much like in the moment, what are you feeling? What's going on? And kind of relates back to what we were talking about before of like this movie being this sort of indie film success story where these, you know, a group of filmmakers just went out and shot this movie. Like half of our set was film students. The other half were like professional people. And then there was like Charlie and I who were like, well, I don't know where we're at, but we like movies and we like making them. And so I think having that sort of space and not, you know, going into the analysis paralysis made us make the right choices for shooting it. And that actually, I want to touch on just because it reminded me, we shot the movie with a traditional crew. So Chris Moresby, our cinematographer of the project, he's a veteran DP. He's been working on TV and features and all that stuff forever. So it was a real treat to work with him. He also came in with all the gear, the bells and whistles, Alexa 35, Alexa Mini, and just all of the stuff that as like a film student, I would be like, and so we started day one shooting on all that gear. And as the film progressed, by day 2, I was like, Chris, do you mind if I like get my camera on the gimbal and we'll just have, you know, the Alexa on its main thing? Because as you know, we were talking about this before this started, as the director, you're not allowed to touch the gear. Yeah. Chris was very much open for me to put the Alexa on my shoulder to be an operator, which was awesome. But I just found like I just didn't know that gear that well. I know my little like wedding videographer setup. So I put my camera on there, like, Chris, like, let's just get our AC or assistant camera to op B camera. And I'll just float around with C camera, my FX3, which is a camera you can buy at Best Buy.
Yeah, it's like one of these guys,
Yeah, it's that camera, I think. Yeah. But funny enough, what ended up happening is because I had the freedom and knowing that Chris was getting movie coverage, he was getting the stuff that was like, you watch a movie, if it's like 2 people sitting at a table, it's these angles, right? You have your over the shoulder, wide. Yep. And you know that these shots will get your movie. As a C camera operator with zero pressure, I could do these weird swirling shots. I could go under the table. I could, you know, spin around them on a patio. And having that freedom and realizing that I was actually getting good stuff and then showing it to Chris, and Chris was like, whoa.
That's cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. And like getting that excitement out of the cast and crew based on my little rinky dink setup. Like it really felt like there was people with IMAX cameras and I had like a GoPro. And having that freedom, what ended up happening was day 1 and 2, we were shooting primarily on cinema cameras, the Alexas. And just for your audience, those cameras are like, we were shooting on the Alexa 35, which at the time, I think it was a $120,000 camera.
Yep.
And then here I am, I bring out my $5,000 camera or $3,000 camera. And eventually, as the shoot went on, we went from a camera, $100,000 camera, to day 3 shooting 50% of it on my little $3,000 camera, to the last day capturing swivel shots and all that stuff 100% on that camera.
Wow.
And I think it's an interesting statement on the best camera isn't the one with the best quality. It's the one that gets the shot and the one that can go from idea to screen fastest as possible. And big gear comes with a big crew, comes with a lot of time. And as you know, as a creative, time is like the most priceless thing. So whatever can get, that shot the fastest is sort of the remedy to the shoot's problem.
Yeah. I love the fact that as you progress through, you simplified.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, we talked about this earlier with lenses and with like looks, how now we're finding, especially with what we do, is we're starting to find ways to implement more playful and more kind of less polished. Like even some of the glass we're buying, like Brady was showing me like one glass that he picked up like 2 weeks ago where it's like, 60-year-old glass basically. And he's like, this is great. And I'm like, that's beautiful. We shoot with that next, right? Like let's shoot with that.
Yeah.
Because it breathes and it's so anti-digital in so many ways. And like digital is just crisp, it's clean, you can see everything. And do you feel that are we going back into a bit more of a, I don't want to say filmic because filmic's been overused, but like just, we trying to go back to those days of texture and noise and grit?
I think consumer accessibility, I think, changes a lot of stuff. And consumer accessibility, like, you can take your iPhone out and like now, like I just did a shoot and I shot a lot on my iPhone because I could just pull it out. I open up a Blackmagic app and I'm able to get pretty great stuff. So like clean 4K, all the spec stuff you can get in your pocket and your dad can shoot that. So it's like, well, then what are we trying to get? And I think, especially in an era, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but especially in an era where I feel like we just don't have any grasp of any, like we're just kind of in this floaty era and we're very nostalgic of a time that didn't exist. I think that comes perfect with us wanting lenses from the 90s or 80s or, the old, like the ones that I'm looking at right now are the zoom lenses that old like newscasters had.
Yep.
And that's something that's like a camcorder used to have.
Yes.
And now all of a sudden we're so far in this other direction where everything's clinical, everything is super crisp. Instead of going for a vintage filter or going for a new type of depth or whatever, we're going for 8K, 12K. And that's because camera manufacturers are looking for specs that look good on a poster, but they don't look at what's artistic. Some companies are going for the artistic thing, but they're really just going for, well, what's the coolest specs we can talk about now?
Mm-hmm. I know that the recent Fuji cinema camera, have you seen some of the footage from
No. Oh, is this the one,
like
that
the large
IMAX one?
format? Yeah. Just stunning.
Cool.
And so I sadly I sadly sold off my Fuji medium format camera. And I love that thing. And that's what I used to shoot all the time. And it was great because it was so flawed in so many ways. It was slow. It was unpredictable. Sometimes it would just shut down completely and just not work for like 10 minutes. The focus was terrible on it. Everything about it was an ordeal. And yet it's one of my favorite cameras still to this day. And like, it kind of reminded me, because it's going to show my age a little bit, it reminded me when I first started shooting, I was shooting with a Hasselblad, right? So we would load the film up, shoot, rinse and repeat, right? And then my mentor would be like, okay, now chuck them in the freezer and then we'll go get some more. And like,
well, you chucked it in the freezer?
Oh yeah, to keep it cool. And then like basically just to hold it and then you then send it off to the developer afterwards. So it was like, film days.
It's a full process.
It's a full process. Yeah. And then it's like, when you look back at that, like I hated the process when I was doing it. Like as soon as digital came along, I'm like, guys, this is the way forwards. And luckily a lot of the digital became, the way forwards for a bit.
Yeah.
And that's where it became really interesting. It's like the digital era became really good, but it still had feeling about it. Like I remember it was this 20D when they had, I think it was a 20D when they had the video come out, and seeing video from that going, anyone can make a movie now. Like that's instantly in my mind. I was like, anyone can make a movie. And then there's these beautiful kind of like promo videos that they put out with them. And the technology just kept getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And I think you're right in so many respects. They kind of looked and went, what specs can we put on the billboard to make people want to buy it, right? Because why do you want to buy a new camera? Because it's got better pixels, it's got a better this, a better that.
Yeah,
right?
You're not going to buy a camera because it's got a worse filter,
right?
Or that you have to put it in the freezer when you're done with it.
Exactly. Yeah, and now we're at the point where we're just like, without like putting Vaseline on the lens, how do we make this softer? Like, how do we make it look cool, and how do we make it look, more tactile?
Totally, and I love that we're going into this area of trying to bring tactility out. And it's funny because I remember, so the camera for me was the Canon 60D. It was a 60D, 70D or 7D. And I remember when they came out, they shot like an episode of House on the 5D, the Canon 5D Mark I, I think, or Mark II.
I think so, yeah.
And I remember seeing that. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a camera I can go and buy right now. And they're shooting TV on it. Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, this is it. And that was, 15 years ago. And we're still creating these limitations. Like I, have a YouTube channel. I talk to and with a lot of young filmmakers. And time again, there's almost like this forced bottleneck that we put on ourselves, where it's like we want the limitation, or like a lot of these young filmmakers want the limitation of being like, well, it must be easy to make a feature film that good because you had a Alexa 35, you had this and that. It's like, well, actually, we didn't shoot a lot of it on the Alexa 35. It was there, so maybe, I don't know, its aura gave us better shots, but like we, and now that people on my channel like comment, oh, well, like, so you do it with an iPhone? Well, now I'm shooting stuff on an iPhone. I'm like, oh my God, like, do people know that you can get this stuff off of this thing?
Yeah.
And so, I think we've gotten to a point where technology is it's incredible. It's so good that I really think creatives want to have a challenge to get through and an excuse. I know people might not want to hear this, but they almost want an excuse to achieve the thing they want versus just going out and achieving it. Because going out and actually doing it is the real work. Yep. And I heard Matt Johnson, he's the filmmaker who did Nirvana the Band, the show, the movie. And they were talking about this on an interview. And it's like, the tech people, it's great to have them. But if you're wanting to be a storyteller or filmmaker, knowing the tech is really like a small part of it. If you're going in for a degree, a film degree is good, but like really get an English degree or get like, something that teaches you creative writing.
Yeah.
And that's always it. Or like just watch a ton of movies and be like, what's the language that works on screen for this stuff?
It's so funny because I went from doing photography to directing, and that jump from directing to photography was an absurdly quick jump because like Brady was like, hey, do you want to direct a commercial for me? And I'm like, I don't really know how to direct. I have no idea. Like literally no. I don't even know how video cameras work. Right? I know still cameras. I know still lights like strobes. Yeah. I have no idea. He's like, no, you just need to show up and then just say action and then just control the action and make it look like the thing you want it to look like. And so
easy,
just do that. And his words were, it's kind of like being a photographer. Just you don't have the camera in your hands. And you're just talking to the people, and then it's flowing into those frames that you want. And for me, that's how I went into directing. It's like, okay, the frame is there. That's where I want it to be. So I need them to go there. So what can I tell them that'll coax them into doing it naturally into this? And so that was the whole kind of like how I ended up learning how to direct.
Cool.
And then, started to learn all the vernacular that goes along with it. And, all of the things that are involved, right? Like from room tone to all these different things that I had no idea. I'm not trained on this, right? And it's like learning to tell those stories it's just that. It's just telling a story. So if you can tell a story, you don't need the technology at all, as long as you have someone who does and who can, kind of say, oh, I see what you're seeing. Let me make that for you. This looks like this.
Yeah, I love that story that like your feet were to the flames. It's like, hey, you just got to go jump into this head first.
It was terrifying.
It must be. You go from photography to doing commercial directing.
And to make it worse, it was on an ice rink. So I'm English.
Yeah.
zero ice hockey experience,
Oh, boy.
zero standing on ice experience, right? Like they still try to get me out doing ice fishing, and I'm like, hell no, this
Is this one of those things that you pretended to be like, oh, I know?
No,
how
no,
to
I
do-"
just
Oh,
like
okay.
I have no idea, and I'd like stand there and shuffle, and then like it's like and the camera guy, he was on skates skating around, and he's like looking at me, he's like, you have to shout action, and I'm like. Action like all these things. I'm like, I don't know, I'm just new here. But it was so funny, and like shout out to Zambo for that. Like it still remains one of my funniest moments on the set. I'm just like frozen, like I don't know what to do.
Isn't it funny? It's like, I feel like as a director, especially in that stage, you're either the head, like you know everything and the ship, you're steering the ship, or you're a PA.
Yes.
You're at the lowest tier.
Yeah.
You are nowhere in the middle.
Dude.
You're like, I know less than the guy who's
Yeah.
giving me coffee right now, and
Yeah.
I'm telling everyone to do.
PAs knew more than I did
Yeah.
on that set. It was terrifying. I'm just like, I prided myself because I was a really good commercial shooter.
Yeah.
And the fact that I could walk into a set and have zero knowledge, that scared the shit out of me. Because I'm just like, well, you know, have I learned nothing? Have I? But then because of that, I didn't try to learn the tech, and like it's still to this day, I'm not very savvy when it comes to video tech, which is a benefit now because now I don't have to think about it. I'm just like, I really like this. How do we make this
Yeah.
work? It's like, oh, you just mount a camera here, or you do this, and you know, this is the way we want to tell this part of the story. So
It's interesting you talking about this. So last year I shot a short film, and I'm proud of the short film, but there was aspects of it that I felt a little disconnected from, and it's interesting. If you think that a director is like knows everything about anything and has all the answers and has a vision, because we see, you know, Christopher Nolan or David Fincher are like, you know, the top tier directors who clearly know exactly what they want. But I also think there's a good chunk of us who don't know what we want, and we're just giving answers. And on this shoot, I was a little lost, but it was interesting because the ship keeps going. If you just have an answer, things will just figure themselves out. Right? Like if you're just like people are just gonna ask you stuff, you just make stuff up, something's gonna happen. If you surround yourself with a good cinematographer, good production designer, great actors, you know, a good producer, things will go. It might not be a masterpiece, but the movie will get made so long as you have an answer. And I really think that partners with what we were talking about earlier, which is really that creativity is why I think the director is so insulated and so like we look up to or admire this job so much because, you know, you could be just a director who gives answers to anybody who has questions, or you can be this person with a creative perspective where you're like, oh, what if the camera swivels around a bunch of times?
Yeah.
And you're like this creative problem solver. Like another thing, one of my favorite things that Charlie came up with when we were shooting Sway is like when he's doing the phone calls in the bedroom, the lighting just changes color. And it happens so intuitive. You're like, of course, like that's what would happen. But when we were on set, I'm like, man, that's genius. Like,
but also
why not?
The colors you chose, like on point.
And
on point.
And I think that's what separates our movie from, let's say, like an indie film, or at least feels like it's striving towards to be a more professional movie, is because we didn't go with what should have happened. We just went with what we thought was cool.
Yep.
And that's why I love working with Charlie. You know, like I'll start to go through this shortcut in my head where I'm like, well, movies should be shot. He's like, well, if they should be shot this way, then why are we doing this?
Yeah.
You know, I remember he said that to me. We were shooting a short film recently, and he's like, I'm like, well, does it make sense to like, he's like, it's a movie. And I think we have to go back to that like suspended belief, because that's why we go into movies in the first place.
Right.
Dinosaurs don't exist, but they do in movies.
I love that, because any filmmaker who watches Sway will go, like, now that I know all the information you've told me, I never would have guessed that. Like straight up, I never would have guessed that. Would have been like our budget, you know, like 80, 90, you know, timeline, maybe a month, you know, like I would kind of go around there. And, you know, and like I said, I kind of, when people ask about it, I'm like, just think of phone booth. Like it's that kind of feel.
Yeah.
And it's very smart in how you did that. And so it's really a eye opener as a creative that you can create not only, you know, a movie, but a really good movie with all these limitations in so many ways, and still walk out at the end of it and have something that's just, it's insane. Like it's never going to go away now. Now you can go on to something else and build something else, but like, a lot of film students go into it and they go, well, I got to have that next camera. I got to have the Alexa. And then I've got to have, $50,000-$60,000 budget for this. And I've got to have, at least a month on that set. And it's going to be this and it's going to be that. And like you said, they throw up all of these like barriers in front of themselves just to stop them from doing it. When the reality is there's a way, right? Like Sway proves that there's a way to make your movie. And to be told, because like up to now, I really have always had the conclusion in my mind, like if I'm going to make a narrative piece, minimum 50K.
Yep.
And, minimum month's worth of time. But now you've just broken every single possible concept I have of that, because that to me is like, we have commercials that we shoot that could go to like 6 days sometimes, yeah.
And I always think it's like perfectionism is the thief of joy, or the thief of like art.
Yeah.
Where if you're and commercials can be that way, right? Where you have a client behind the monitor and you're tweaking the chip bag or the can of whatever.
Yep.
And an audience does not give a shit about how that angle of the can is. They don't. When have you ever watched a Twisted Teas commercial and like,
right?
Oh, so glad that the light was hitting it on this angle.
I just roast them because like my kids watch a lot of YouTube TV. And there's commercials in there, and they'll be sitting there, be like, "Oh, that was a good commercial, right, Dad?" And I'm like, "Were we watching the same thing? Like, pull that up on YouTube. Let's break it down." And I'll just like,
you should do that. No, that'd be a great series. I'd watch that.
Yeah, they love it because they do it to drive me nuts too. Yeah. Like they do it now because they're like, "Hey, Dad, check this commercial."
Rage bait.
Yeah, they're absolute the generation of rage baiters. Yeah. I swear, they're just like, yeah, they're really good at it. So,
but it's interesting because I think I'd rather have freedom on a project than perfection. And that's, I think if you look at it as like a graph, let's say 100% quality is Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. And that's $250 million. I don't know what the budget is, but let's say that's what it is.
Yeah.
Ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
Sway, and let's say this is 100%.
Yeah.
I'm down to take a 20 to even 30% quality decrease in order to have 100% more freedom. Mm-hmm. And so when you're watching Sway, which got to play at Cineplex, it got to, to get a theatrical, all this stuff, and we're shooting on a camera you can buy at Best Buy on a little monitor and not even shooting at the full res that the camera should have been shooting at. I found that out afterwards. I was shooting at like one of like the proxy settings.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I'm sure our colorist loves hearing this, but just knowing all of that stuff, it's like, again, having those things gave us more freedom to shoot, which then, gave us more time. And so at the end of the day, no one cares. Like no one really cares. Even other filmmakers don't care.
Yep.
Like you're another filmmaker, saw this movie, and that's who I'm really thinking of when I'm trying to make it perfect. I know my mom and dad or people who watch the movie aren't really going to notice the quality change, the fact that we shot this on a $100,000 camera and this on a $3,000 camera. But you might, and even other filmmakers like, dude, I love that. Yeah. So it's like, what are we doing this for?
Yeah, who are we doing this for?
Yeah.
And I feel that we're in and it's a really weird phase that we're in right now. And I think we're on the edge of seeing a lot of good content come out. Because I think right now, as we're seeing with the ease of content, especially with all these new tools that are coming out, I think when that wave is done, I think we've got like a year of that. And then I think afterwards, people are going to start realizing, well, actually, I can make a movie. And I don't need, and I think we have a sea of creatives that don't know how to tell their stories yet, and there's like a sea of people who have the technical, and I think they're going to start to connect when they start seeing all this AI slop come out and all this thing, and be like, well, we can make something better than that. So let's just do it. Let's just do it and make something interesting and make something heartful and just, bring some soul back into the cinema and just start telling the stories, because the soulful movies really are for the cinema goers, like the ones who actually go. They're the blockbusters. I always call them like the commercial hits.
Yeah,
right. They're the commercials, right? They're shiny, they're beautiful, they're very well rounded. They've been gone over by 100 different accountants, and it's like they've made it absolutely perfect to the end what they're trying to do, and they run it through all the test groups and all that. But then the movies that are just like they're made for the sake of being made. Right? Like when we think of all of our like cult classics, they're always low budget. They're always a small team. And they're always people just saying, fuck it, let's just do it. Right? Like,
yeah. And I think to piggyback off of that, the AI slop that we're talking about, I think there was a yearning for Marvel content, or, you know, what we had between 2010 and 2020. There was a yearning for it because we wanted spectacle. Like, oh my God, we have full 5.1 audio, a big screen. And yeah, we had big movies back then, but that was the excitement to going to the cinema. Now you can watch Tom Cruise fighting Brad Pitt. Have you seen this video?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
So we can see them fighting on a rooftop, and in seconds, like you could generate that. Your kids could generate that.
Yep.
So the excitement of seeing spectacle is actually less exciting now than watching just pure creative human innovation. So for me, I'm optimistically looking at the future of this stuff and seeing that the runway could be more grounded, indie. What is some 16-year-old kid thinking of a movie to make versus a committee of producers who are trying to fill seats? And I really do hope that's the direction we're going into. I've found, like, just as a person, my taste has gone more towards like collecting Blu-rays and tactility and the weird indie films and stuff like that, versus streaming services and whatnot. And I think there is a connection between those two worlds, that the convenient mass-produced stuff is becoming less interesting, and we want to own our content. We're wanting to have the specific stuff that really resonates to us. So I'm optimistically, like, as a filmmaker who's, you know, trying to, you know, break into this world, as much as I'd love to do a big blockbuster movie, it excites me that, one, I can now. That I have the tools and technology to be able to go out with my fiance, who we make movies all the time together, and just go shoot a sci-fi epic because AI made it accessible. I think that there are zero bottlenecks or roadblocks to the process other than ourselves at this point.
I love that. It's really, really hard as a young creative to get started.
Yeah.
Because you have no knowledge. But now the knowledge is cheap, right? Like, there's a little thing called YouTube. You can search pretty much anything on there now and discover and become an expert really quickly.
Yeah.
Right. This is how, if you talk to anybody in IT, this is how they problem solve like 90% of their problems, by the way, is they just go and Google
terrifying.
it. Which is, it's terrifying, but it's also true because they have enough of the building blocks at the beginning to go, that's how we do that.
I went to the pharmacy the other day. I had a tick bite. And I was like, hey, like, what do you think of this thing? And the guy, like, 1 second, you just see him going on Google and Googling it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just 1 sec, like, watches the tutorial.
Oh, that's a predictor.
yeah. So, yeah, I see what you mean. And it's sad that that's also the reality. But it's cool. Like, for me, I'm self-taught. Started watching YouTube right out of high school and never went to school for it.
I was going to say, you didn't go to school at all for this?
No.
Wow.
No. Film Riot. I don't know if you're familiar with that channel. Film Riot was my film school.
So I've been watching Film Riot since Revision 3.
Oh, cool. Same.
Yeah. So that to me is like, anybody who knows Revision 3, I'm just like, you're an OG. I like that. Yeah. Because like they struggled at first to figure out how to get their content, but they just kept doing it. And now it's phenomenal. And those guys, I think, are ahead of their years, right? Their movies they make are really fun, they're exciting, and they talk about it, and they talk about like those DIY techniques. And like I used to spend hours just learning, like, okay, how do I make a softbox out of like, you know, tissue paper and an egg carton, you know?
And like it's probably whatever you made with the egg carton and the tissue box probably is comparable to some of these bigger setups that now you can just buy off of Amazon. Like it's not like quality has changed drastically. Again, I think if we look at the percentage scale, it's like what you can buy out of the box for like $1,000 is maybe 30% better than what you could build in your garage. Maybe. Might not even be that.
Yeah, I find for me now, it's about, and I've gone through the learning the storytelling and doing all that, because that was one thing I realized you kind of have to learn, like, you know, what's a story arc, like all of those things. But now I'm going back into like more human to human context stuff. Like, why do people do what they do? And like, why do they act a certain way? Because then when you're watching it on your director's monitor, right? Like Brady very early on said to me, like, don't touch the cameras, stand back here, get out of the way. And that to me was like, that was the worst part of this. Like that was actually the part where I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Like, I love being behind the camera. I love setting up the lights. This is where I'm at, right? Yeah. But to step away and to be like off in the corner by yourself, and they usually like put black blockers around you so you can't see anybody, and you're just like, okay, I'm here. You know,
like in the corner with
action.
The old
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm somewhat of a social person, so like I like to be out there and in the group, and it's like sitting there and just watching the screen and watching how people interact, and it became more of a fascination for me because I spent a lot of time growing up as ADHD, and I didn't know it at the time. And so I didn't always know how people interacted, and I would like jump ahead of people. Like I still do when I get excited. I'll jump over people's words because I just need to get it out, right? And watching how people react to things and learning, and I grew to really see how the human behaviors and how people are.
Oh man.
Right. And that's like, for me, that's more, if you can learn that and combine it with storytelling, you got a killer combo.
It's interesting you bring this up because I was just talking about this the other day with Jackie, my fiance, and I sometimes like I feel like I'm an outsider in the world, like, and maybe it's ADHD or something, but like I feel like I'm always observing. I'm like, what is it like to be a human? Like I feel like a little bit of like an alien sometimes,
Yeah.
where I'm like, oh, is that how normal people talk? And as a story, it's funny because I'm drawn to the camera because I like to observe. Like I like to watch humans be human. It feels so weird. But like sometimes I'm just like, oh wow, like that person's funny. That person knows how to talk to somebody in a loud environment. Like there's so many things and quirks to myself that I like love the fact that I can just like tuck behind a monitor or tuck behind a camera or tuck behind a screen and watch something to just see how people.
Yeah. People. I like that. That's going to be a new t-shirt for me. How do people?
How do people teach me? That'd be a YouTube tutorial I would watch.
I love that.
Yeah, Film Right needs to do something on that.
Oh, dude, they should. That would be, and like, yeah, their commercial breaks would be phenomenal for that. You've been looking forward to this for 6 days. You were telling me earlier, right?
Yes.
I've been dreading this for 6 days because where you're a director who's done something, talk about imposter syndrome, I have nothing to my name. I have one documentary about Brady, which was, it still remains one of my favorite little pieces that we put together. Very simple, just a look at hunting without actually looking at hunting.
Cool.
Right? So looking at the world around it. And we have our second one that we're doing called Lumberjack. And it's about a cancer survivor. And now she went from being a teacher, got cancer, came back, and basically couldn't go back to teaching, which if you know anybody who's a teacher, it's like it's a lifestyle. It's not just a job, right? So how do you leave teaching and become something else? And so she did. And she ended up becoming this person that goes out and finds old like lumber and refashions it into art pieces.
That's sick.
It's beautiful.
So is it always focused around an artist and like their
apparently
cool?
My two movies,
this is your
like
thing.
That, yeah. So for me, like when you know, I was looking forward to you coming on, obviously, but I'm terrified because I'm like sitting there going like, he's gonna call me out. He's gonna be like, you're not a real director.
Yeah, I knew it.
You haven't.
That's why I came. That's why I was looking forward to this to call you out. Yeah. Yeah, to make my
like
imposter syndrome feel a little bit better.
It's like just waking up.
Yeah.
It's like wake up now. Oh man, it's the nightmare of being ousted, right? Like that's the So I think for me, when we talk about imposter syndrome, it's often from a lack of doing it. And so like you said, like going out and just doing it is going to result in, getting over that imposter syndrome and just going through it. So
yes, and I think I think some people have great confidence and they're good at hiding their imposter syndrome. I would say I'm the flavor of it. I've always been crippled with it, whether it's shown up on a feature set, a little commercial shoot, or even just filming like some random thing that a friend needed me to film. It's always in the back of my head, and it has never hindered my process. Anytime like I come home, I look at the footage, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. But boy, is there like this little demon in the corner, and he's always been there. So it might sound discouraging to anybody who might have it. To me, it's just I've been cursed with it forever. Maybe in 20, 30 years, I'll have a big ego and be fine. But I also think it keeps me humble in the process because I think maybe I'm afraid of killing that imposter syndrome for the fact that ego could be even a worse demon to be dealing with. And I almost like to be humble in film shoots and sets because there's this weird hierarchy that this world has that is so ridiculous. Like we're artists, we're not brain surgeons. This isn't really anything that someone should be intimidated from somebody or that you should have an ego for. Even the best of the best, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I love that. I've been fascinated with the idea of making a feature. The fact that you're able to make Sway in, killer budget, killer time, just reinforces the fact that I probably just need to just start writing the script and getting the concept down and, really kind of building out the art behind it. Because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but when we get into this role or into this world, we often get sidetracked by the stuff that, you got to do this to pay the bills.
Yep.
Right.
A friend of mine called it the golden handcuffs, because filmmaking is a very lucrative job. And there's basically, I feel like there's two channels. There's the make a lot of money as a commercial person and work for brands, and then there's be a starving artist.
Yeah.
And I think the starving artist haunts the financially sane person, and the financially sane person's insanity influences the artist.
Yeah.
And finding that middle zone is really where
It's tough.
great artists live. But and I really think that is where great art can be made. To go make a feature film just to scratch an itch is great. I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm interested in making feature films that are financially viable, that have an audience, that can make money at the box office, that can push my career forward, because money comes with eyeballs. And if I'm trying to make something that people are going to see, it's also going to probably make money. But I also don't want to be on this hamster wheel of making stuff no one wants to see. Mm-hmm. So I think being able to dance. Have you ever heard the story of like the businessman and the fisherman?
No.
It's a bit of a long-winded one, but it's basically like this businessman goes to this Mexican fishing town, and he's on vacation. He's just like closed his last company. I'm going to botch this story for anyone who knows this story, but basically, businessman goes on vacation in Mexico and sees this fisherman off on the shore, and he's just catching these big, massive fish. So he goes up to the fisherman. He's like, "Hey, man, like, what are you selling these? Like, what is the whole fish thing? Like, what do you do here?" And he goes, "Well, I have the best life. I come here, I drink a bottle of wine, I catch some fish, I bring it home to my wife and kids. We have a lovely afternoon. I make the fish, and then I come back out again the next day and live the best life ever." And the businessman goes, "Well, have you ever thought about, having a little shop here, and, building out like a little bit of like a fishing setup?" And the guy goes, "Okay, like, and then what? Like, what happens after that?" He goes, "Well, if you got big enough, your fishing business could, maybe escalate, get a little bit larger. You could have a couple different like fish stores, and you could be catching fish and serving these like high caliber restaurants. I have contacts with these Michelin star restaurants." He goes, "Okay, and then what, senor?" He goes, "Well, then, you could maybe have a bigger supply, be a bigger supplier, catch fish and really supply to these larger chains, go to grocery stores, restaurants." He goes, "And then what?" He goes, "Well, then you could probably get to the point where you have the freedom to be sitting at home at a sunset, having dinner with your family and loving your life." And it's kind of this weird circle that we get caught in, which is like, striving for the freedom to which we had when we were young filmmakers or young creatives, and then getting lost in the financial, the businessman aspect or the fisherman aspect. And I'm always finding myself battling with, am I the businessman here or the fisherman? And I really think to be a sustainable artist, it's both. It's and as a filmmaker who has the starving artist haunting him, I'm always like trying to catch the bigger fish. I'm trying to like make more money to keep the roof over my head, and having no means to an end for that. And also, I just want to make movies. That's all I want to do. I just want to make stuff, and I would pay to make stuff. The fact that I get paid to do it is ridiculous. So I think more artists need to be more business savvy, and more business driven people need to find that inner artist.
I love that, because I spent my first, like in the beginning of my career, struggling like crazy. And then I got to the point where I'm like, I need to make a change, and I need to understand the work behind it, the business behind it. And so I spent a lot of time learning the business, became really good at the business side of it. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, yes, the business part is great, but the art part is great too. So let me take some of the assets that we've built up here and apply it here so that we can do cool things, so we can build. And it's just, I think the starving artist trope is, I think we should banish it. Like you should be able to have, your art and a mortgage.
Yes.
Those are not, enemies.
They're not. And, I think like we create self-inflicted bottlenecks, not to say that there are people who are obviously starving artists who do struggle, but in an industry where it's so lucrative, I think having a healthy balance between both being the artist and also having a roof over your head can exist, and it's very accessible. Talking as someone who had no support other than my parents, like thumbs up, YouTube tutorials, and then just reaching out to local businesses, like that was kind of it. And I think just a curiosity, like I remember I heard another DP talk about this, that, film is only 100 years old, or maybe a little longer, a little shorter, give or take. It's such a short medium that there's no way to do it. That's why TikTokers are now the ones that are making the most money out of this, because they are not doing things by the rules. They're just kind of doing what they think is cool. And 9 times out of 10, or 1 out of 10 times, they become viral and they do well. And those other 9 times, they're sloppy or they're not good, but at least they're just like getting the paint on the wall, versus you go from this corporate angle and everything has to be perfect. It has to be, well, we've got all these metrics to say that this thing worked well. Thor, this movie worked, so we got to do another 5 Thor films, or this commercial works, so we have to shoot it this way. And it really like taints the creative perspective. But when you work with like really creative people, like one of my favorite people to work with is cinematographer Nick Pilecki, and he'll go on a commercial shoot for like a grocery store. Yeah. This might not be a real example, but I know he's worked with these brands that want it this certain way. And he'll be like, well, why don't we just go like blue and red lighting? And they're like, well, that's not the way it looks. He's like, it's a commercial. Yeah. Just relax. Razzle dazzle people for 30 seconds. Yep. That's all they want. And that's all we want, is just an opportunity to escape our boring world, to have a heightened reality for 30 seconds to an hour and a half. Yeah.
I think the art imitates life, but art also allows us to take a little vacation from our reality.
Totally.
Right? And so you can, for a moment, live in a different reality and I think that's where we're going to see the next generation of filmmakers go. I think that COVID kind of put a kibosh on the cinemas, but I think they'll come back over time, but I don't think it's going to be soon. The other thing I think is going to happen is I think we're going to see like channels like YouTube rise. Yep. And that's going to become your new like channel.
I think, yeah.
Right? Because right now, if we wanted to make a movie, we would make the movie and sell it to Netflix or to Amazon or to like a TV channel, right? Or try to get some kind of distribution. But now you can become the distributor on your channel and then push it out, and then you can get the benefits from that. And I think that's a really beautiful place to be. And I think the more we can lean into that as artists and show the process and do all of that and show all the things around it, all the fun stuff, like that's like these guys do like a little mini like documentary every single time we do a location shoot.
That's awesome.
So like, Jacob goes out and he films stuff and just like basically does like behind the scenes, but then they make it into a little kind of narrative story, and it's really cool to watch.
It's because it's human made, and now we have technology that takes the human out of the process and we just have the piece. And I think as viewers or consumers, we want to see how this thing was created. We don't want to just have the result. For the first time ever, we're like, oh, like let's watch the behind the scenes on the Blu-ray or on the DVD. Like, at least for me, I've always been obsessed with that. But I'm glad you brought up the distribution thing, because I feel like I have a bit of a hot take on this.
Go for it.
And being a filmmaker who has dabbled in all aspects of filmmaking, so I've done documentary, I've done the YouTube thing, I've done the feature film thing. The only thing I haven't done is like a TV series. But I've dabbled in all the worlds, and the 2 ones I want to talk about are YouTube, like online content creator thing, and traditional style. Now, 10 years ago, are you familiar with NAB?
NAB, like the show?
Camera convention
thing. It's up in LA usually, right? Or Las Vegas, sorry. Yeah.
It's the thing of a building the size of Costco, just filled with camera gear and camera nerds.
Yeah, and then they just go and then they love it and then come back with like $10,000 worth of gear.
Totally. Yeah. So it's like this giant trade show. Yeah. It's like you're in the deepest depths of Amazon. Yeah. Not the Amazon, but Amazon Prime. Yeah. And 10 years ago I went and I vlogged it on my vlogging camera.
Very cool.
And I had all these industry people looking at me like, oh, what are you going to do? Film your cat playing on a piano next? Like, it just felt like I was looked down upon. Flash forward a decade, I'm now there speaking, and you have the ASC members, the American Society of Cinematographer, DP, doing a talk, and you have some rinky-dink YouTuber. The guy who's a professional DP has maybe 5 people in the audience for him. The YouTuber has 30 to 40. And I'm not comparing, like I'm anywhere close to that person's technological ability. And I would rather watch his talk than mine. But the general interest is changing. The YouTuber who maybe would have done a panel a decade ago would have 1 person. Now that's times 40. and the traditional, filmmaker now has the half or a quarter. And so that's something I'm looking at as like indicators. The other indicator I'm looking at is, as a filmmaker who has now published a feature film that I think is like, checked the boxes of what I think a filmmaker would want. It landed on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play. It also got to play at a major cinema chain here in Canada. It also got to play in the US. It did the theater streak. Like, it kind of did the things that I think as a filmmaker you're wanting. I have those two buckets. And so far, the more financially lucrative one is the YouTube category. The more eyeball-driven one is the YouTube category. I wouldn't be surprised if the behind the scenes of the movie has more views than the actual feature film. The behind the scenes did quite well, but like, just seeing these metrics of accessible content versus gatekeeper content, you're starting to recognize that, like, as an audience member, I'm going on YouTube way more than I'm going on Netflix. And if the metric for success for creatives is Netflix or it's an Oscar, those are just like, I hate to say, but ego-driven accomplishments, right? Like, if, let's say you remove Netflix's platform out of it, you really just want to be like, oh, I'm an accomplished filmmaker because I landed on Netflix, right? Let's say you get 1 million views on Netflix or you get 1 million views on YouTube. Does it really change? And let's say financially you get the same thing. The only one that's different is you get to tell your parents that you got on Netflix, or you get to tell your friends that you landed on it.
Yep.
And maybe when you're pitching your next film, that will look cool.
Yeah.
Because you're financially
because you're going for your investor rounds, right?
Yeah. But at the end of the day, investors are just looking at, okay, how many theater did you go into these theaters? How much money did this make? I don't think they care about the platform it landed on. They're caring about how much money is Mr. Beast making on his YouTube channel. Okay, he's making this much money. We'll give him an Amazon Prime special. So I think if we can remove the platform in our head, because the platform is going to change. Are movie theaters going to keep going? I don't know. I hope they do. I love going to the cinema. We're going to go to the movies after this and go see a movie. I love the cinema experience. I love seeing stuff on Netflix. But we're also so like clinging on to what movies were when it's evolving so fast that maybe we kind of just got to let go of the reins and go, maybe it's YouTube, maybe it's augmented reality, maybe it's this. But there's like this traditionalist approach for an art that's like so young. Like, this is like the ugly teenage years, right? Like, if painters were like, oh no, paint can only live on ceilings of cathedrals. Oh my God, that would have been extinct. It would have been dinosaur. But no, it's like on paintings and photos. There's like right there. There's like an interesting documentary I watched where they talked about painters feeling like they were going to become extinct to the photograph. Have you heard of this? Yep. It's like photography came in and all painters were like, well, there goes our job. We can't do anything.
Yeah. I remember living through that, through the film to digital age. Like, everyone was like, photography's dead.
Yeah.
Right? Photojournalism's dead because you can no longer prove that it's real. Like, the negative proves it real. Right? And now we're at the point where we're like, well, you can't prove anything is real now.
Yeah, now we've gone really far.
Luck.
Yeah.
Like, the videos don't even count now, right? So,
but then all of a sudden a platform was born,
Yep.
which is the internet, Instagram, and now all of a sudden photos do have a place.
Yep.
And so maybe the platform hasn't even been born yet. And we're clinging onto the cinema. I do hope the cinema stays, but I think there's also this traditionalist approach that kind of is like bottlenecking innovation for where art could live. Right? If photographers were like, it can only be print. Well, they could probably never anticipate that Instagram was going to exist.
Yeah.
And now that's the platform where photos exist.
I remember when I was looking for an agent when I was a photographer, and I was going through trying to find an agent just to get my work out there more. And every single step of the way, the main hurdle for me was you don't have a social following. Because and that's what made me at that point, I'm like, well, this is no longer about photography. This is literally just, inbound audience, right? So, I could be the guy that goes and just buys an audience and I'll naturally get in. And that to me instantly was like, that's a flawed game.
Yeah.
Right. So if we look ahead and like the platforms and all that, I am excited because there's no reason to have, you could have, a hit movie out with like 5 followers on YouTube.
Totally.
Right?
How many followers does Christopher Nolan have on Instagram?
No idea.
He doesn't even have he doesn't even have a phone.
No. I love that though. That I I would personally
admire that a lot.
Dude, I would too. So, I mean, for me, like, I know that there was one guy, super ordinary, and he opened up a YouTube channel and he's like, I just want to do things for me. I've done a lot of brand work with like Nike and all these big names. And he put together an amazing first episode.
Cool.
And I was like, wow. And his, like, I think he went from like 0 followers to like 280,000. It was a ridiculous like jump just with one. And so that just shows you like one good art piece can set you up and you can start telling your story and show. And I think it was because of the monumental success he had where he got crippled, and the second one was okay. Right. And it wasn't a great one, but it was rushed. You could tell it was rushed because like the other one
trying to ride the wave.
Yeah. The other one probably took like 10,000 hours to make.
Yep.
And then he's like, oh, iron's hot. We got to go. Let's tell a story. Think of a story quick. Right. And doing one of those
It happens.
versus just sitting there and then, you know, sitting by the fire and hanging out with friends and going like, wow, this is a story we should tell. Right. And that one thing that you just can't shake. I think like storytelling is that for me, is like being able to find that one thing that I can't let go of until I've made it.
Yeah. It's, so another creative pursuit that I did a couple years ago was like, it was almost to like prove my English teacher wrong or my grades wrong. I wrote a book, and I wrote a book about originality. And one of the things I kind of came up with in that was like, is it a crush or a curse? So the idea is like, if you have a creative pursuit or an idea, it's kind of like having a crush. So I don't know if you've heard this, but it's like if you have a crush for someone longer than I think it's a month or 2 months, then it's probably love. And we all know if you don't pursue love, it's going to break your heart. And I think concepts are the same. If you have an idea that's in your head for just a quick thing, and it's probably like someone hot walking by, you're like, just like a quick little thought. I actually don't want that. But if it's an idea you're brewing on for more than a month or 2 months, if you don't pursue that, it's going to break your heart. It's going to be this thing that like you've lost this love. And so I think about that with every project. Is it a quick like stimulant? Is it someone hot or sexy? Or is it a crush that goes into love?
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a much more binary, like, will I regret not doing this?
Yeah, and that's a great thing to think of. Yeah. And I think with that imposter syndrome, I almost need to have those metrics for me to pursue things, because I think of an idea every 10 minutes. Like I walked in here, I'm like, oh, cool, you can shoot something with this thing and that thing. Right? Like it's just the brain's always going. So to have like a sort of filtration system of like, pursue this, don't pursue this. Is this going to be a regret not doing it or doing it? And when you go into the world of feature film, series, or even documentary, like you're not subscribing to a 6-day shoot. Like as much as Sway's amazing that we shot in 6 days, like that's the shortest part of the process. Mm-hmm. You know, Charlie wrote it for months.
Yep.
We edited it. You know, I think we edited the film in 2 months, and you're like, oh, cool, the edit's done. Well, no, now you have to go into coloring. Coloring's weeks. Then you have to go into sound design, which is, you know, another month, 2 months. Yep. And then you have to shop it to festivals, get rejection letters. Yep. Like, no matter how you slice the pie, you're in it for a year to 2 years minimum. So when you're looking to take on a film, it's not, just be a 6-day shoot. That's like the smallest slice. That's like, you have to be crazy passionate about something for a long duration, or else it ends up on a hard drive, like probably many of our projects have, or at least mine. I have so many movies that just never went anywhere because it was a short stimulant. It was something sexy in the moment, but I wasn't in love with it. Yeah. It wasn't a crush. So I think like differentiating those, and also being like that artist you're talking about. I think of another metaphor. I'm sorry, I'm like bombing you with metaphors. No, please do.
I love it, yeah.
Another metaphor I always think of is like an archer. And it's like, if you have an idea, or it doesn't even have to be a film, it could be, you know, your business or where you're at in life. You're like an archer drawing back their bow. And I don't think of that in a span of days or hours. I think of that as years. So it's like, this year, I'm just drawing it back. This year, I'm just aiming. This year I'm letting go. And then maybe it's a full year of it spread, like flying through the air. You never know. But thinking of life in those sections versus being like, I'm going to. Yep. Because if you just fire the arrow, it's going to hit somebody. It might not even hit the target, right? Yeah. And I think like giving yourself the time, we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year. And I think that just compounds. And I think with anything we pursue, we'll see a movie released on Netflix, or we'll see a filmmaker did something in 6 days. Like, I could do that. But it's just like, we'll also be patient. Like, if there was like 2 things I'd want people to get from this podcast, it's like to surrender to the process and be patient with it. And those two things garner the best results.
Yeah.
Always. Patience never made something worse.
See, I'm a very impatient person, though.
Same.
So
Dude, I'm talking to myself here. I'm hoping I watch this later.
It's like, Lord, give me patience now.
yeah. I want to get tattooed on my arm.
It's interesting you talk about the timelines between production, post-production, and pre. Because Brady and I are having this conversation in Lifetime right now about how much time should be allotted to each. And my argument right now is more time in pre equals less time in production.
Yep.
Equals better time in post.
Yes.
Right? Because if you shorten this, the pre, then you're kind of finding it on set. And if you're finding it on set, you're kind of having to refine it in post. And it's kind of a messy kind of process. So we're trying to really streamline our process. And it's mainly for commercials and, storytelling in general. But it's for someone who's not really been in this field long, it's staggering the amount of work that's required in this. And it's just, like you said, you have to go into a project going, this is a passion project. I want to do this, because that passion is going to drive you through the entire insanely long process. Even though it was 6 days on set, there's a lot more behind this than meets the eye, and people only hear, they hear 6 days on set. Go, wow, you made this movie in 6 days.
No. That's the iceberg. That's the tip of the tip.
Yeah. That's always the part where people see and they're like, yeah, I would love to do that. But it's like, yeah, would you love to do all the reps that were hiding below the water?
Totally. And the recovery time afterwards. Like, no one talks about, I made my first feature film at the age of 21, and that was based off a short film I made, and it just got interest, and I got money from a Hollywood producer. I got to go make it. I was too young to really, that was my film school. I just went and shot this. It was this first-person zombie apocalypse movie. We built this camera rig. It was before GoPro was really good. I think we were at a GoPro 2 or something.
So was it like Hardcore Henry?
So, funny enough, that's a trigger word for me.
Sorry.
So when we made that movie, the same time they were making Hardcore Henry. So at the time, I was the first feature film in North America to be first person. And then basically, as soon as we wrapped principal photography, the trailer for Hardcore Henry came out.
No.
It just destroyed me, because when I finally did finish the movie and it got out there after a year of reps, the Hardcore Henry went to TIFF. There was a bidding war, all this stuff, and then I looked like the knockoff. And if you read any comments of the movie on the Letterboxd, it's always like, "Whoa, Hardcore Henry knockoff!" Da 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 da.
Oh, that's
and
heartbreaking.
The distributor who I worked with just rode the coattails of Hardcore Henry. They're very different movies, but if you look at the packaging, they renamed the film Hard Line. Sounds like hardcore. And they did all these things, but that movie was so much work on my spirit that it took me. I went to YouTube afterwards. I'm like, I'm done with regular filmmaking. This is stupid. I have so many people to talk through. I can't just hold the camera myself. I almost feel like an imposter throughout. There's so many layers to the process that were stressful and I didn't like. So then for 8 years, I made short films and YouTube, and really honed in my craft. Built a channel of over 140,000 or whatever subscribers. Got to work with people like Film Riot and go on these channels that I absolutely love, and you meet my idols and all that stuff within that world, and then come at filmmaking from a new angle, one that wasn't trying to be this bottom. I don't know. I just felt like I was at the bottom of the bottom, the PA who had a vision, and that was it. And everyone else knew better than me. Now, after 10 years of honing my craft, doing shorts, documentaries, learning YouTube, basically learning a new style. It felt like I learned how to play a completely different instrument and then re-entered the band versus trying to be a master at one instrument. I was learning something completely different. And in that time, now when I go on a set, imposter syndrome's still there, but I'm doing stuff where people are just like, whoa, you spun the camera around a bunch of times?
Yeah.
Whoa,
yeah.
It's going like this. I'm like, yeah, we do that shit on YouTube all the time.
All the time, yeah.
That's what kids are doing in their backyards. But if I'd stayed in the system for that 10 years and I made another feature, I joined a union, did that, I think it would have hindered my creative spirit. And I think also it's like, you don't have to go at things back to back to back. You don't have to make your feature and then go make another one.
Yeah.
Take the time to digest. That was a huge part of my learning.
I think there's a risk aversion that's happening with big dollars, right?
Yeah.
When you put a lot of money in, you want to get a lot of money out, or you want to get your money back out, right? So there becomes a risk aversion. But if there's smaller dollars, they're less risk, they're more risk averse, basically. So like, they end up becoming something more interesting, because now you can get into that play. And, I've talked about it ad nauseum with creatives in general. Their best work comes from the lack. So it comes best with some buffers.
Yep.
Some, and then limited playtime.
Totally.
Because then you're forced to come up with something on, like today, creatives are notorious for taking forever to do one thing, right? But if you force them with a shorter timeline and you give them some boundaries, they can make amazing things.
I think that's just humans in general. It's like if we had written a script for this talk, we wouldn't have hit any of the points that we hit here, or any of the ahas.
I tried to write a list of questions for these, and like I was sitting there trying to go through them, and then Brady's basically looking at all the different ideas that I'm going through, and I'm just like, today I'm just going with enough. Like, I'm not going with anything, because I just want this to be a flow state. I just want it to be a conversation.
Yeah.
And the best ideas, always are the ones that you end up sitting there going, let's chase this.
Totally. Right? And we're facing that right now with our feature film that we're gearing up to shoot this June. And it's this film that I've wanted to do for years. So talking about films that you think about for a long time. I've thought about a movie like this for probably 10, 15 years, since I watched my first Christopher Nolan movie, Memento. And I was like, I want to do like a memory loss movie, Eternal Sunshine vibe. And myself, Charlie, the writer, and Jackie, producer, lead actor, the three of us are like going back to the script writing stage again and again and again and again. We're on our 5th draft of the film, and we're going through it so many times. But one, I think it's part of the process. It's the iceberg, and you're getting to the point where you're like, oh, this tastes good. Jackie has a great saying. She's like, it just tastes like a good meal, when you see like good piece of art or something's working, like, this is good. And I feel that way with these projects. But there's this part of the stage where it's like you work really hard to create the confines. So that's the script. You've built your barrier, and then you go on set. And when you go on set, they're like, "Who the fuck wrote this?" Like, this is you go through like a critical lens, and you're really working through that so to make that even better. So it's like you're sharpening a pencil, and it's like it feels sharp when you go into production, and then you're in production, it actually seems quite dull. So you sharpen it. Even sharper with your cinematography, with your production time, with good performance. All of a sudden now it's super sharp. And then you go into editing, you're like, this is dull as fuck. Like, I got to sharpen it again with editing, with sound design. And at that point, you missed the fact that you've been creating this very razor sharp piece of art that, if you were just in one of the stages, let's just say production, it was actually kind of dull, throughout that. And it's taken all the steps of rewriting the film in those categories for it to be what it is. And that's why I have a tremendous respect for even the worst movies out there. Whether it's a Michael Bay film or a film that's got 1% on Rotten Tomatoes, there's still insane artistry, and there's still someone. Like, if you look at the reviews of my first feature, people hate it.
Oh no.
It's got horrible reviews. When we ended up premiering it, it was sold out audience. I got a Blockbuster. Like, people were around the block to go see it, and they're in the pouring rain. And I was dying inside for the premiere. And it played. People absolutely loved it, and it was a great screening. But afterwards, I got reviews from it from reviewers who I really respected, and they hated it. They hated the movie. It destroyed me. But I think that's kind of part of the process. It doesn't matter what people think about your thing. It's awesome if we were able to create something that is awesome. That's great. But like, in 100 years, no one's going to care of your existence at all. So the process of doing it is really the fun part. It's the collaborators that you got to meet, the DP, the production designer, the actors, the writer who now you're best friends with, and you're writing stuff. Like, that's the benefit of it. If the output is great, that's the cherry on top. But the cake of it all is really just meeting people and getting to do one of the craziest jobs, I think, in human existence. This is ridiculous that we can make money and talk about this for 3 hours.
Isn't it wonderful?
It's wild.
Zach, I want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks.
I really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to find you online or hear what you're up to next, like, where can they locate you?
OnlyFans? Zach Ramelan. So ZachRamelan. Zach Ramelan. And you can find me on YouTube, Instagram. That's kind of it. And maybe OnlyFans. We'll see.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.